I analyzed over 1,000 John Wick reviews to see what the audience loved or hated about John Wick. First, let's do a brief rundown of how I did this. I went in and built a functioning web scraper. Then I went and scraped all the 5 and 4-star reviews and put all that text into one document. Then I scraped all the 1 and 2-star reviews and I put all that text into another document. And just for information, there were about 1,000 positive reviews that I scraped and 100 negative reviews that I scraped. I then plugged those 2 documents into a free software that counts common keywords while ignoring words like it and the. And just so everyone knows, I have not seen this movie. I wanted to first do the analysis before I watched it so I wasn't biased in the results. Anyways, this is what I found out. Expectations can drastically change your movie experience. Depending on your expectations, you probably either loved or hated this movie. The people who hated this movie talked about how there was too much action. Of the 100 negative reviews, about a third of them used the word action in a negative context. 9 talked about how the action was totally unrealistic, and 22 talked about how the action sequences were just too long. Words like fight and fighting were also negatively associated with words like long 26 times and unrealistic 25 times. Some of those are repeats, but I think you get the picture. I found it really interesting that there were 2 scenes that were harped on the most when people were talking about action and fighting. That was the stair scene where John apparently falls down for like 10 minutes. And then there was the scene in the nightclub where John's going on a slaughtering rampage with an axe, and everyone's just like,
I like to party.
I like to party.
I like to party.
The stair scene was mentioned 12 times, and the club scene was mentioned 18 times specifically. So it's not a huge amount, but it's definitely enough to show a pattern. There were also 10 separate people who compared the action to playing a video game, which I thought was interesting, and it makes sense since John literally kills 140 people in the 4th movie. That's almost 50% of the previous 3 movies combined. So let's put that into perspective. According to this stat, the average time to beat God of War is 21 hours. This YouTuber did a kill count of his God of War playthrough, and he killed 755 people. So if it took him 21 hours just to do the storyline, that means Kratos kills about 35.9 people per hour. In the space of 3 hours, John killed 140 people. So that's 46 people per hour. John Wick literally killed more people per hour than the God of War did. Alright, so some people didn't like the action. That's understandable. It sounds like some action scenes were more monotonous than others. And to be fair, some negative reviewers praised the better storytelling from the other films, so it wasn't their first John Wick rodeo, and they clearly aren't action averse because they were coming back to see number 4. But here's where things get really interesting, and it says a lot about knowing your audience and having the right expectations. Of the 1,000 plus positive reviews, the word action was used positively over 700 times. There is no other word worth talking about from the positive reviews. Hardly anyone mentions things like cinematography, acting, and story. People just talked about the action. So that really in essence sums up this movie and its audience. The people who watched John Wick 4 and loved it are probably the same people who would play games like God of War and love it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's just all about having the right expectations and knowing your audience. For example, I love Pacific Rim, but it's not for the acting or characters. I love it because I like watching stories where giant robots smash the heads of giant monsters. So there you go. If you haven't seen John Wick 4 like me, then I guess have the expectation that this is a movie for the reptilian brain, not the prefrontal cortex. It's not a bad thing. It's just all about having the right expectations.